Hello everyone, my name is Lowko and welcome back to another best of 3 series of professional StarCraft 2. Now, what I got for you today is a Protoss versus Terran, and both of these players are some of the very best in StarCraft 2 right now. Spawning here in the top left hand corner of Acid Plant LE in game number 1 of this series. He's from the Netherlands, the greatest country on the planet. I might be slightly biased in that regard. We have none other than uThermal. And his opponent, spawning in the bottom right-hand corner of the map, he's playing with the blue Protoss probes. He's from South Korea, easily one of the most accomplished Protoss players on the planet. I personally consider him to be one of the very best. We have none other than Stats. So this is going to be a best of 3 of Protoss versus Terran. Now, if there's one thing that we have been seeing a lot in Protoss versus Terran, and judging by what uThermal is doing so far, it's not happening in this game right here. But I have seen a lot of cheese. In particular, Maru, of course, who's considered to be the greatest Terran player on the planet right now. He's been doing a lot of cheese in Terran versus Protoss, and according to a lot of Terran players, that's mostly because TVP is really hard to win when you're trying to play macro, but honestly, Maru just makes it look easy. The man has been dominating over in Korea for pretty much the entirety of 2018. He's one of the absolute favorites for BlizzCon, which will be taking place in just a couple of weeks, so I'm curious to see if Mark is going to be going for something along those lines as well, because uThermal, he always strikes me as a bio-based Terran player. He loves playing that bio-based army. He's very, very good at it, but he's definitely not afraid of going for a little bit of cheese. I remember him going for like Reaper rushes, even like Battlecruiser rushes just a couple of years ago. So we'll see if he's got something along those lines planned for this series right here as well. Now, Stats, on the other hand, he is very much so your orthodox Protoss player. He loves playing that macro-based Protoss style where he's perfectly capable of playing aggressive, but most of the time he will be the player who just simply sits back and he will try and just simply macro up a bigger army than you can muster, and that's what he's really, really good at. Now, obviously, uThermal is going to be a little bit trickier to predict. We'll have to see how he's going to respond to what seems to be a normal game right here from uThermal for the time being. Stats already chrono boosting out that very first Adept. It's going to be followed up with a Stalker as well. You can see the timing here is absolutely perfect. It should be able to ward away that Reaper, and of course uThermal isn't really even expecting to do any damage. He's just simply going around trying to see what his opponent is up to. And he did get a little bit of a scout there, so right now uThermal knows that there is indeed a robotics facility follow-up here from Stats. Now, this is actually a bit of a risk, right? If this was me, my Stalker would get stuck right there. Am I crazy? My Stalker would get stuck right there every single time. Obviously, Stats is setting this gateway in a bit of a rally point where that wouldn't happen. But if you're a ladder player, you probably don't want to set up your buildings like that. It's a bit of a risk. Maybe just put them out so you have a perfect wall there instead. But obviously, that's meant there to trap that early game Reaper. It's like this gentleman's agreement, you know. The Reaper isn't supposed to do any damage. Even though uThermal knows he's not supposed to, he's also going to try and see if his opponent is a pro gamer. He's like, hey, are you a pro gamer? I'm going to come up with my Reaper right now. It's meant for scouting only. It didn't get any proper kills there, but it did get all of the information that uThermal was looking for. Twilight Council now has a follow-up here as well for the Protoss players. So no Stargate shenanigans or whatever. We have been seeing quite a bit of Glyphed Adept play once again in Protoss versus Terran, which is quite interesting. But it looks like in this game, Stats is going to be opting to go for the Blink upgrade here instead. In the meantime, on the other side of the map, we do see a very normal opener here from uThermal as well, opting to go for that 1-1-1 style, which is very popular in pretty much all of the Terran matchups, where you go for 1 barracks, 1 factory, and then 1 starport. And basically, because of this combination of structures, you can really go ahead and get a variety of units out, although it already looks like uThermal is planning to switch over some of these structures, do the big switcheroo, get tech labs right there on his barracks, and start upgrading the combat shield as well as the stim pack upgrade. There we go. The big switcheroo is indeed in process. So we are going to be seeing that bio-based army. Now, even though we don't really see very much here if we were the Protoss player, already Stats is going for the 3rd CC. Widowmine drop now, though. Or the 3rd Nexus, rather. Widowmine drop, though. Trying to be a bit of a nuisance. It does look like the medevac will be sniped. Widowmines, trying to get whatever damage they can. But this really is not the damage that the Terran player was looking for. Losing both the medevac as well as 3 Widow Mines, that's very substantial. I'm assuming uThermal maybe assumed it was also going to be Glaive to Depths, right? He didn't really anticipate those Stalkers already being out. Double Forge now is a follow-up here for Stats. So rather than really capitalizing on the advantage he just got himself, this is what Stats does. Rather than going for like a big push, he's just simply gonna make Double Forge happen instead. It's nice. It's a smart way of playing. He's basically thinking, hey, if I'm ahead right now, how can I get more ahead? And obviously double upgrades is a great way to go ahead and do so. uThermal, though, he doesn't know about the fact that there is a third... Well, he actually does know about it, but he hasn't really responded to this fact just yet. Instead, uThermal is just gonna sit back and try and macro up an army. Obviously, mules do sort of even up that economy difference, but not for very long. The longer that this goes on, the more the advantage will go in favor right here of Stats. He now also does have Blink done, so he can easily poke in and out right here with those Stalkers. This map is a little difficult. You can't really blink across nearly as conveniently, although you obviously can still try. There we go. He's gonna move across with some of those Stalkers. Trying to see whatever damage he can do. uThermal is now forced, of course, to send those Marines back once again. But by the time they arrive, once again, beautiful micro there. Stats is not gonna even take any base damage on any of those units. He's once more just simply gonna get on out of there. And while this is all going on, right, you can see Stats is just simply macroing up more and more economy. Already 54 Harvesters versus 45. And I know I really hammer on economy a lot, but economy is so critical. Now, the Stalkers will be shot at right there by some of those Siege Tanks. The Siege Tanks, of course, they will be able to force these Protoss units to stay back. But I love this, right? This is very critical. But already, Stats split off one Adept there to scout the incoming aggression. And these Stalkers, well, they're on the hunt. They want to deal some damage. I don't think they're really going to be able to do anything critical whatsoever. They're likely going to just simply blink down to the low ground. One of the Stalkers there does end up dying. But uThermal's push has definitely been delayed. Third Command Center now following up here as well for uThermal, but I think he's planning to move across the map with the army that he's got. Once again, though, that Blink Micro is absolutely on point, and while this was all going on, right, Stats secured 16 probes on the third base, and now he's also macroing up Immortals as well as more and more of those gateway units. A couple of shield batteries now coming up here as well, 2-2, already being researched here as well. I really like this position here for Stats, although uThermal does have a rather scary army, and obviously with those Siege Tanks, right, they can definitely deal a lot of damage as well. Siege Tanks still sieging up there, the Stalkers blinking forward right on top of all of those tanks. The Immortal in the back shooting away at this as well, and that was easily cleaned up there by Stats, although he does need to make sure he doesn't overextend. That Marine Micro right here from uThermal, absolutely phenomenal. He actually manages to push back that Protoss army. I think that Stats assumed he was just simply going to smash that force, and while the Zealots certainly dealt a lot of damage, there's no denying that uThermal still managed to get some value out of this, all things considered. Third Command Center now finished up. uThermal already started building additional SCVs for that base, evening up those supply counts quite a bit. And Stats, he's now sitting in a bit of an awkward position because he doesn't have a Protoss army right here that deals any splash damage. Whenever you're going up against a bio-based Terran, right, you may just simply have the numbers, but if you don't have splash, Marine Marauder has this nasty tendency to get a lot of value. So I would love to see a transition right here from Stats to maybe, for example, High Templar, or obviously Colossus, or maybe even Disruptors. I think all of them are viable, but there we go. Finally, Templar Archives is coming up. Obviously, this allows the production of Archons, but also, of course, the High Templar, because Splash is going to be absolutely critical. Stats might actually go for a push before then. He doesn't really want to fight a massive Terran army, obviously, but uThermal, he's looking to get those Marines and Marauders out. Double Liberators here, just simply slowing down the Protoss player. A whole lot of probes actually end up going down here anyway, right? That's 8 probes for 2 Liberators already. Not bad whatsoever. This one is going to try and unsiege. Will just barely not be able to get on out of there, but uThermal successfully bought himself a lot of time. No splash damage available still here. Oh man, that's awkward. I was gonna say, he should notice those, right? No splash damage available just yet here for the Protoss player. It's very critical. Zealots are just simply going around, trying to figure out if there are any hidden expansions here for uThermal. Storm is now coming up though, and Stats is gonna be able to finally get some of those High Templar out as well. They are going to be the real stars of the next engagement. The better the storms are, the easier the engagement here will be, but uThermal is very well known for playing that slow, methodical Terran bio-based army. He's just simply macroing up more and more units. And he's actually now overtaken the Protoss player here when it comes to supply. Still though, even though Stats looks like he's going to be taking a 4th Nexus here in just a little bit, the scouting here from our Protoss has been absolutely on point as well. Sending units in pretty much every direction to know when there are engagements coming up for the Terran. 4th Nexus actually does still get planted. I guess the fact that these, well, they're having a bit of a stare down. I guess the fact that this Zealot is out here makes him feel confident that he can split off the majority of his army to try and make a move over here. uThermal, though, still knows that there are some Stalkers inside of the main, or at the very least they were there earlier when he got in there with Liberators. So I would be very surprised if he decides to get in there. While this is all going on, though, Stats is still going to transition. Even though he already has one source of splash damage, he's still going to transition right now towards a second robotics facility as well as a Robo Bay. So he can go for either Disruptors, there we go, or Colossi. I like the Disruptor play a lot. It's very, very potent, in particular against siege tank kind of army compositions. Obviously, they can definitely turn the tide of battle very easily, but before we will see that big amount of splash damage coming out of Stats, uThermal is looking to go for a push, and his army is looking menacing. This is a well-upgraded force. +2/+2 is not quite done just yet, which may actually hurt him just a little bit, but it's all about position. If you can get those siege tanks in a juicy spot where they can start shelling away at this Protoss army, they can change the tide of battle. Now, keep in mind, the High Templar right here, they are inside of a Warp Prism, so they can't be EMP'd, but they're also a lot more vulnerable. At the same time, though, Zealots made their way across the map. Stats is going to try and basically deal with his army while also counter-attacking with a couple of those units. The High Templar still inside of that Warp Prism. There we go. They will finally show themselves. Beautiful storms are going down. The Immortals and the Archons actually now getting rather close to the siege tank clump as well. Look at that target firing right there by Stats. And while this is all going on, right, the SCVs are taking tremendous amounts of damage. Stats absolutely smashes that army. And that means that he will be able to get a 1-0 of an advantage right now against uThermal. Yeah, that was really well handled there, not gonna lie. Stats just simply mastering those engagements, right? He didn't mess around whatsoever. He just simply decided to counterattack with those Zealots. That's like the scariest part, you know? If you're a Protoss player and you know there's a Terran army coming, to warp in like 7-8 Zealots and to send them across the map is the scary part, because what if you accidentally commit too many units to the counterattack and you accidentally just throw them away when you needed them in the engagement instead? Obviously, they were the ones, though, that essentially put a timer right there on uThermal's attack. uThermal either was forced to shove forward or to maybe go for that retreat and deal with the Zealot run by. But regardless, here we are in game number 2, and I think we have something a little bit more aggressive coming up here for uThermal. I like this. It's very difficult to scout for Protoss. Instead, what Stats is gonna do is likely send a probe across the map, which I think is the correct move. If he sends it across and he can like scout the main base, oftentimes as a Protoss player you should be able to feel out what kind of structures are missing. But obviously, since Terran can just simply produce anywhere, right? They don't need creep. They do not need a power field of a pylon. They can produce anywhere. A lot of Terran buildings have been constructed over the last couple of months outside of the main base of Terran. And I personally really, really like the idea. So here we go, right? Stats will scout. Hey, wait a second. Double gas has already been taken, rather. No orbital commands. It will now be started up as well, but there is no barracks to be seen anywhere. Right now, Stats knows that he is dealing with a proxy. Now, seeing the double gas actually is really nice, because I've got a feeling that uThermal likely is planning to maybe go for some sort of what are they called? Cyclone proxies. Cyclone's really good. There we go, yeah. A reactor coming up here for uThermal. He's gonna try and snipe that one probe, I suppose, as well, to figure out if he can deal some damage there and deny the scouting from Stats. Stats, though, in the meantime, I wonder how he's gonna respond to this. Some Protoss players still just simply take the command center, or rather the Nexus on the low ground. He's gonna go for the robotics facility first, which I really like. I think that's smart. Obviously, if you think that your opponent is gonna go for that Cyclone cheese, Immortals are absolutely phenomenal. Still, you gotta keep in mind that Terran also has the option to, for example, go Cloak Banshees, right? With this kind of shenanigans, you don't really know what's going on. Keep in mind, Stats has not found where this proxy is located, or rather over here. He doesn't know what's going on. uThermal, though, is gonna go for the Cyclone play, and obviously this can deal tremendous amounts of damage. Looks like Stats is feeling confident, though. Look at that. Still just simply sending down a probe to the low ground. He's like, alright, you know what? You may change my build order somewhat. I will get the robotics facility before planting down a Nexus, but I don't really care. Right, I got myself a second gas. As long as I can get an Immortal out, I'm gonna be fine. Now, he does need to be careful, because obviously Stalkers might be needed here as well. We obviously know that it's a Cyclone-based play instead. And I like this, actually. The Widow Mines now coming up here as a follow-up as well. They're gonna be great for potentially zoning away any pesky Protoss units. Here are the Cyclones, though. They're gonna be able to do a lot of damage, man. There's no way that Nexus stays alive, right? Am I crazy? Look at the damage that these units deal. I mean, that Stalker and Zealot can try and show them who's boss, but those SCVs are gonna be able to repair this up with ease. Stats trying to buy a little bit of time until the Immortal is out, but it's only just now started. Well, I guess that's the second one, eh? But still, this is... Well, if he manages to keep this base alive, I would be very impressed. No, there's no way, right? Beautiful zoning there. I love that, right? Forcing these Protoss units to go all the way around. And I guess the SCVs can help out in this regard as well. They are going to be forced to repair some of those Widow Mines. They don't mess around. But still, this is now semi-containing stats here. And I wouldn't even mind seeing like a follow-up right now from uThermal. With, for example, a command center on the low ground. He did, by the way, go for the starport here as well. So still that 1-1-1, but a little bit different than you might normally expect. Well, here we go, though. The Widow Mines are gonna move straight up towards the high ground. That's 4 Widow Mines here in total. The one of them will be hit there. And I guess with that Observer out, that attack will essentially be shut down. Stats did end up losing 1 Zealot there, but that's definitely forgivable, right? 2 probes, 1 Zealot, in exchange for 4 Widow Mines. I think Protoss will take that trade any day of the week, and now that Stats has secured the low ground, he's once again gonna try and take that Nexus. Here's the Banshee, though, moving across. Cloak is just about to finish. uThermal will be able to finish up another Banshee here in just a little bit as well. Keep in mind, obviously, we did see that production there of the Observer. So the Observer is going to be absolutely critical unless Stats decides to send it across. This is a bit of a risk, right? Sending those Observers out onto the map is a little bit risky. Now, the Warp Prism did also come out. So essentially, uThermal does have an open route right now towards that natural hero of Protoss, but he doesn't know about it at this point. Very difficult to scout this out. Instead, he's going to secure the high ground over here, right, in this little dip in of the map. But now with the Warp Prism moving across, right, and the double Immortals inside of the Warp Prism, the Terran army can definitely push forward. At the same time, another Observer was made. Stalker's now forced off the line to try and deal some damage too, but here we go. Let's see how Terran responds. Looks like uThermal is planning to send the units back home, although no, he's actually returning them once more, going after the opposing natural instead. The defending Banshee will now be the one tasked to shoot away at these Immortals, but still, with proper micro, you can get a lot of damage out of this. And obviously, with the Observer still here, right, we can also see that warp-in of the Stalkers. At the same time, the Cyclones made their way across the map. They're trying to damage that Nexus a little bit. He might just decide to move up towards the high ground instead. Immortals, in the meantime, are trying to deal a bunch of damage to those supply depots, shutting down uThermal's production. And speaking of shutting down production, there we go. The Pylons will be killed here, and that does mean that Protoss is forced to use mass recall. I think you should go after Nexus, right? Take care of it. Take care of it before the Immortals can shoo you away. Beautiful move here so far by the Terran player, and actually, I was assuming that Terran was going to go after the base, but that's not the case. Instead, he's just going to stand there and fight. Stats, did he not bring back the Warp Prism? Oh, the Warp Prism was still on the other side of the map. That's a big deal. Regardless, though, one pylon there was rebuilt, and that does mean that Stats is once again going to be able to warp in, but there's just way too much Terran. I think Stats should have tried to recall that Prism as well, you know, with a little bit of micro. He could have definitely kept those Immortals alive for a little while longer, and with that, he should have been able to push back all of those units. But apparently, it wasn't meant to be. uThermal picks up game number 2. Alrighty, so that brings us to game number 3. Oh, and I was gonna say, uThermal is already sending out 2 SCVs at this point in the game. Looks like only one of them was destined for greatness as it's moving across the map. Now notice, this one was sent out much quicker than the previous one. That's a big deal. I'm assuming this might just be some barracks play. Yeah, there we go. Second SCV now also moving across. No gas is being taken here for uThermal. Although, obviously, he might decide to do so in just a second. Well, I mean, he would have to start constructing it here after, I guess, the first barracks goes up. This has to be almost barracks cheese, right? Otherwise, there we go. Otherwise, you wouldn't send out a second SCV this quickly. The gas now also starting up, yeah. Now a probe is once more moving out as well. It's not checking around the base. Some of the top level Protoss players have been checking around their bases for proxies instead. But it looks like uThermal has decided to put down the barracks in a rather greedy position, right? This really isn't that far from the Protoss main, but it will remain unscouted for now. Stats, though, should shortly figure out that something is not quite right as he enters that Terran main base. Not even a depot this time at the top of that ramp, which uThermal has been going for in the previous games. That kind of immediately shows Protoss that Terran is planning to go for an all-out, all-in. Because usually if you go for the wall-off, at the very least you might be able to ward away some adepts and whatnot later on into the game. When you don't even go for the wall-off, it kind of indicates, at the very least to me, maybe I'm incorrect, but at the very least to me it indicates that Terran is putting all of their eggs in one basket. And speaking of eggs in baskets... Ooh. Nope. Already a third barracks is now coming up as well. Reapers are on that production tab. Will we even see an orbital at this point? I don't think so. It is just an all-out, all-in right now by uThermal. He wants to end this series right here, right now, with back-to-back cheese. Rather than even going for the orbital, he goes for the bunker on the high ground here. Now, Stalker is already coming up. I like this. That's going for the double shield batteries. Shield batteries, of course, very, very good at shutting this kind of aggression down. Probes forced off the line, which obviously is costing this Terran, or rather this Protoss, a lot more than it cost the Terran. Terran is just simply producing 3 Reapers here at once, which is the only thing he really wants. Going after the probes, though, this is a difficult thing to pull off, right? As soon as Warp Gate finishes up, and Protoss is going to be able to start warping in some of those Stalkers, this is going to be an extremely difficult game for Terran to win. The bunker looks like it may very well end up finishing. Yep, there we go. So that means the Reapers have found themselves a bit of a safe haven. Obviously, they will continue healing up as well. 3 Reapers at once. I wonder how this is going to play out. I feel like the longer that this goes, the more it will be in favor of Protoss, right? The more Stalkers come out, the easier this will be. One exposed pylon there, though, that will be powering, of course, that cybernetics core as well as the gateway. That's a rather big deal, right? Stats doesn't really want to... he doesn't really want to commit on this side. Stats also not really over-committing here on shield batteries. Sometimes you get the gut instinct to just put down 20 of them. But at some point, you're gonna need a bit of a bigger army. Well, the pylon there does fall, and that means that the third Stalker won't come out just yet. And that the cybernetics core upgrade has been reduced in its efficiency for just a little while. Still, this is a pretty substantial amount of Reapers already, right? Those Reapers definitely will just continue growing in number. And I wonder how exactly Stats plans on dealing with this. I feel like Stalkers, though, are just gonna be great, right? Once these additional gateways finish up, and once the Warp Gate research is finished, I think that Stats is going to be able to hold on relatively easily. And keep in mind, uThermal only has 14 workers. uThermal is on the clock here. He needs to end this game relatively soon if he wants to win this series. Because so far, I feel like the Reapers has done... They've done a little bit of damage, right? But nothing too substantial whatsoever. Beautiful handling so far by Stats, though. He doesn't want to fall to the back-to-back cheese. 2 probes there end up dying in just the blink of an eye. But there we go. The warp gates are done. And that means that Protoss can start warping in 3 Stalkers at a time. Still these shield batteries in absolutely phenomenal positions. They are running a little low here on energy as well, but Stalkers are slowly picking off all of those Reapers. And, I mean, right now the numbers may very well be big enough to fight away from those shield batteries. uThermal desperately trying to deal whatever damage he can. The shield batteries right now are very, very low. That does mean that some Stalkers there end up dying as well. But the longer that this goes, right, the more heavily it will go in favor of Stats. Stats is just simply out-mining his opponent. He's got full saturation, where there are only 8 SCVs mining minerals here for uThermal, and he's just barely getting enough to really mine for the production here of Reapers. I mean, right now with Stats holding the high ground, right, he's in a great spot. Stats doesn't even really need to scout. Oh man, one Reaper just simply finds his death right as it jumps up towards the high ground. I think Stats has done it. I think uThermal is making a last-ditch effort. But GG is called. Stats, in a very calm and collected manner, obtains the victory in this series. And while in game number 2, he was looking a little bit shaken, obviously, I think if he would have just mass recalled the Warp Prism as well, he would have probably just been able to hold that aggression, though, from uThermal, right? With a little bit of juggling of the Immortals, I think he would have had a chance. Regardless, Stats definitely the deserved victor of this series. I hope you enjoyed watching this video. If you did, make sure you hit that like button down below. And if you want to see more, make sure you hit the subscribe button so you get notifications as soon as I upload more. A special shout out to the Patreon supporters. You guys are awesome. But for now, I want to thank you for watching. Have an amazing day. Do not forget to smile, alright? And I will see you once again in the next one.